Good morning, everyone. Jim Clark here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary in Central Virginia to share a contemplative focus with you today. And that focus that I wanted to share with you today is simply, who am I choosing to be? Truth or illusion? Who am I choosing to be examines how our observation affects our consciousness. As quantum physicist Werner Heisenberg noted, observing a system disturbs it. In other words, we don't just observe what's outside of us, it actually has an effect and impact on that system. In this context, true observation is witness consciousness, which disturbs our multidimensional consciousness. This disturbance manifests in our unconscious identification with illusory thoughts, beliefs, and stories. Wakefulness, or witness consciousness, empowers us to make responsible choices. Just as a television has many channels, our mind offers various thoughts and perspectives. Only through wakefulness, in the present moment, can we choose the channel we want to watch, determining who we choose to be. So, this was a very powerful entrainment that I experienced with my teacher many years ago, and I still experience it because I still watch and witness who I am choosing to be. It's a habit. It's a good habit. It's one that I don't really want to give up because I notice it every day that I have an option to respond to what I see in a positive way, a negative way, or not, or to avoid it altogether, which is a negative way, really. So, I have, as I was waiting to start this live stream, I remembered an incident many years ago when I was in Charlottesville doing my errands, and I had a friend helping me on that day, and we were at an area in town where there's homeless people, and they're always sitting there waiting, hoping that you will pull over. And this particular area was one I knew well because I went there a lot as I do errands in Charlottesville. And there was a lady there that was always there. And once in a while I would pull over and give her some money. But on this occasion, as we were driving towards her, my friend started to talk about how angry he was when he saw people out there holding their hand out. And he said, he just made a case for how he felt, and he was having a very strong emotional reaction to this situation. And what I saw in that moment and what I felt about that whole incident was that he was caught in a situation. He was running a story that it was not comfortable for him, and yet he had no choice but to run it. And then he had to respond to it emotionally, and then he had to justify it out loud to me as if I knew what it was and cared. And so this is a prime example of how unconscious choosing operates. And most of the people in the world today are doing just that. They see something, they react, and then they consider their observation and their reaction to that observation as something that is real, something that was out there, something that could not be questioned. Truth is, everything can be questioned. I do that constantly, especially in today's world. That's where the world seems to be going crazier than ever. When I'm not laughing about it, I look at some of the things I see on YouTube or whatever, or news broadcasts, and I can't help but wonder just how accurate any of this is. I mean, we live in the age of information, so much information, and yet we also live in a technological age where information can be presented in any way whatsoever. It can be influenced with technology. It can be influenced by somebody choosing to word things in a certain way when the observation doesn't even deserve that. So what's real out there, and why indulge in all that internet surfing when you, in truth, only know that there's something on your screen that you're reading and you have no idea what's behind it. Maybe if you're lucky, you have a couple trusted sources of information, but to me, it's not ironic. It's an observation I make about how the world has always been. There's a few awake, aware people, a few conscious people in the world always that are witnessing everything around them, and they witness themselves, and they choose to be a loving, caring, non-judgmental observer, because they don't really, they know that what they know, and they know what they don't know. And this is a very important point to me, is that I oftentimes find myself seeing something, and then I know immediately I have no idea what this is really. And so I go back to that, and even in myself, a lot of times I'll find myself responding to something, a situation or a person or whatever, and I watch myself attempting to run a story. Doesn't matter what kind of a story, but what I always catch is that I really don't know. And so and that for me works as a practice to keep myself more aware and more present and more able to choose who I want to be. And who I want to be is the quality consciousness that everything and everybody outside myself is. So in other words, there's nothing to judge. We're all equal in the participation of the creation game that we happen to be in as human beings. And how we turn out to be, how our actions are exactly appropriate, because that's the experience that we came here to have. And that's what's happening here in this world. Unfortunately, most people in the world don't have that perspective, and they don't have the commitment, they don't have the balance that you get from meditation and holistic lifestyle. And so they're just caught up in an endless loop of reaction and storytelling and reaction and storytelling. And of course, this always backfires on us, doesn't it? If we run negative stories all the time, sooner or later, we are confronted by the impact that had on the system that we were observing. And so it's wise, and it's so much better to be wakeful and to choose to be loving, because when you choose to be loving, you're loving yourself. All you can see out there is really yourself. That's the ultimate truth. There's only one source consciousness, and every individual expression of that consciousness is the same consciousness. Sure, we have many dimensions of experiences that are happening simultaneously, but it's all the same consciousness. There is only one. And that right there is, for me, it's like an anchor, okay? There is only one. All the rest of this stuff out here is an illusion. It's a play of consciousness. It's not real. And to get back to that reality simply requires us to finally reach a point in our own cellular evolution to drop the mind, which is the movie theater where we are seeing this person and that person, this event and that event, and running stories on them constantly because we think that's real and that's out there, and I have a belief about this and I have a belief about that, and so forth and so on. What people do every day in every way, and they run themselves crazy with all this judgment and stuff. So when I see people demonstrating, when I see people who are angry about something and they're out there yelling about it, I recall when I was much younger and the Vietnam War was still going on, and I had friends who had been in the military as I had been, and they were demonstrating against the war, and I empathized and agreed with their sympathy, with their message, because in my eyes at the time I agreed with that particular perspective. I agreed with it even when I went in the military. But what I also saw was that their impact was almost the opposite of what their intention was. They wanted to bring people to come to agreement with their perspective. And through the demonstration, all they did was get more responses depending on what people's backgrounds were and what their perspective was, irregardless of what their intention was. So, for the most part, and because they weren't always what I would call peaceful demonstrations, there's a lot of emotions in those things and whatnot. And when I had my own emotions and I agreed with it, and I was sorry to see that the world wasn't going the way that they wanted it to in that respect. But and I still feel that way today. I see that there's more war than ever going on here and there, and yet it resolves nothing. It only seems to create more of the same. So, so what are we really doing here, and how conscious are we as a whole in our daily interactions with ourselves? Who are we choosing to be, and are we even choosing to be, or are we just victimizing ourselves with unconscious choices, because we can't see the knob to change the channel. We can't access our power to observe and to love and to be who we want to be. As my teacher said, if you want love, be loving. What you put out is what you get, because that's how you're disturbing the system, if you will. That's what you're putting out there. So if you put out anger, you get anger back. And that's what Vietnam vets got when they were out there demonstrating. They got anger back because some people judged them in a negative way, and so forth and so on. So anyway, that's just the mechanics of how everything works in this world. If you're awake, if you're aware, and you want to create a better world, choose to be a better person. Choose to be a loving person. If there's not enough love, be loving. If there's not enough caring, be caring. And so forth and so on. Because as a part of this system, we have that impact on it moment to moment to moment. And if we're running around like I run around in Charlottesville doing errands, as I have mentioned, and my interactions in town with people, usually check out people in stores and whatnot, is always very positive. I have good interactions with them. Sometimes I find they seem to go out of their way to help me with certain things too, because I'm walking around in a relatively expanded state of awareness, and I'm choosing to be loving. I enjoy the observations that I see, because I create observations of people at play. And so that's my world, and it's only my world because I choose to be who I choose to be, not who I'm not suffering reactions to what I see. I am enjoying the results of choosing to be loving, and that's pretty simply it. So that's what I encourage everybody who's watching to try for themselves, to just be wakeful. Watch what happens in yourself when you entertain negative thoughts, when you entertain anger or judgment, because something triggers you. And then realize that what you're seeing out there, what's upsetting you out there, is upsetting you in here, inside yourself. So you're not really loving yourself when you allow yourself to choose to be judgmental and so forth and so on. It's a matter of learning to love yourself. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. This is an exercise that has helped me out and still helps me out, because I've made a habit out of choosing to be loving. And when I make a habit out of choosing to be loving, I immediately get aware of anything less than loving that my mind wants me to pay attention to. So that's what I wanted to share. I hope this is of some use to you, and I thank you for being here and watching. And I'll be here after we have 2 programs coming up, so it'll probably be about 2 to 3 weeks before I can come back and do another live stream. But until then, choose to be loving. Choose to love yourself by the choices that you make about who you are at any moment. Thank you so much, and I look forward to being with you again.